And we welcome you live. It's In the Circle live here as we are going to talk Olympic softball, ladies and gentlemen. Eric Lopez here alongside Victor Anderson. And 13 years in the making. And wow, that's going to be exciting, Vic, here. A great moment. Olympic softball just about to start at the top of the hour to kick this tournament. We didn't know if we would have it. It got postponed a year. It was supposed to be last year. Got postponed this year to this year. Fingers crossed. Things go well between now and the next couple of weeks for the Olympics in Japan. We won't get into all that. All we're going to get into is what's going to happen on the field. In about an hour, we're going to have the host team, Japan, will take on Australia, which I think is a fascinating matchup. That will be at 8 o'clock Eastern, followed by USA, Italy at 11 p.m. Eastern. These games can be watched on NBC Sports Network. Our friends Beth Mowins, Michelle Smith will have the call of the game. Jessica Mendoza is in Japan, so they will be part of the broadcast. I wrote about that for Justin's World in detail. But here we are, Victor, an hour away, less than an hour away from the first softball Olympic game played in 13 years. Your thoughts?
It's been a long time coming, honestly. And as I said on Monday's episode of the podcast, it's about damn time that softball was back in the Olympics, and an opportunity for a lot of stories to kind of get closure. There have been a lot of comebacks that have been publicized with Kat Osterman, Danielle Laurie, among others. There are countries like Italy who are in the Olympics, Team Mexico. There's a lot of stories that have been written, and now we're going to see, hopefully, the final chapter of that start to come to fruition in the top of the hour with Australia taking on Japan.
Now, before we move forward, let's talk about the coverage that we're going to provide here, because as our good friend Sooners Sean has told us, people should acknowledge us. That's right, as the best softball show out there. Right, Vic? You got no qualms with that.
Yeah, no. So who would be the Paul Heyman in that role? Would that be you or would that be me?
That's you. You're Paul Heyman and the Usos, because you are a main eventer.
Yes, I am.
Like Jey Uso, right-hand man. But you're also Paul Heyman. You're the brains behind the show. You make it happen.
Yes, thank you.
It work. I'm Roman Reigns. I need I say more.
The head of the table.
That's the head of the table. But we're going to have great coverage here. We're going to be on here tonight to lead you into the games later, or preview tonight's games, and get you set. We're going to be back on Wednesday night, same time, 7 Eastern. We're going to be scheduled to be joined by Jen Becerra, who joined as part of the Women's College World Series coverage. Then Vic and I, possibly guest, will be on after the U.S.-Canada game. USA-Canada Wednesday night, 8 o'clock. That's a marquee matchup that we'll talk about. We'll be on and the pregame at 7 and then postgame live after the game. Who knows what time that could be at.
When that will be, we don't know.
Victor could be cussing me out, depending how long that game goes. So that'll be Wednesday night.
After what I had to do with Oklahoma City, I ain't going to be mad at any time that we go on the air.
True. So that'll be on Wednesday night. We'll still have our regular podcast on Thursday, which will include our interview with new George Washington head coach Chrissy Shoemaker. More on that later on this program. And then we'll have live shows over the weekend as the Olympics develop, including towards the medal round as well. But we'll get into that more over the weekend. Make sure you follow us. Where, Vic?
Follow us on our Twitter account at In the Circle SB. Follow us, subscribe to us on our YouTube channel, so that way you don't miss any of our episodes, live and previous. So you can if you want to get an understanding of what our shows are like, just watch some of our episodes that we did with In the Circle live from Oklahoma City, where we have various guests. We hit on the topics, we hit on the games that took place that day, give you all extensive coverage and breakdowns on the action that took place in the Olympics. 6 teams, one of them's going to go away with the gold medal. And you want to talk about a start to the tournament. You got Australia versus Australia, the only country who has medaled in every Olympics in softball, taking on Japan, the host country.
All right, let's get into that. So let's break down the schedule. And this is tricky because a lot of this depends on where you're tuning in with, because although you have viewers out in the central time zone, we have viewers on the West Coast. Heck, we got viewers out of the country, by the way. We have viewers outside the United States as well, especially our good friends in Canada. We have people tuning in from Japan. So we're a global show, ladies and gentlemen. So just kind of run down the schedule. Now, this will be based on U.S. Eastern time.
Yes.
Japan is 13 hours ahead of the schedule.
11,
okay.
Yes, exactly. So all the time we're going to be talking about will be in U.S. Eastern Standard Time. So, of course, we have the game tonight between Australia versus Japan. That's 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific time. And then you have USA in their opening, and then you have USA going on in their opening round game. That'll be 11 a.m. Eastern Standard. That'll be 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then you have a game on Thursday, game on Wednesday, game on Thursday. No games Friday because that's when the opening ceremonies of the Olympics will be taking place. You have games all weekend, and then Tuesday, you see the schedule. Bronze medal game, 12 midnight Eastern, 9 p.m. Pacific, and then the gold medal game, get your coffee, get everything ready, 7 a.m. Eastern time, the gold medal game next Tuesday, 4 a.m. in the Pacific time zone. So you see the schedules down below on our ticker so you can follow along. You see Mexico and Canada, Wednesday morning, 2 a.m. Huge opportunity for Team Canada with Danielle Laurie and company.
I'll be watching that while Vic is sleeping.
Yes.
It's just going to be a lot of fun. Now, we did we kind of did a preview of the show of this Olympics on our Monday podcast, which includes our interview with Shayna McBroom, the Division II National Player of the Year. So we encourage you to check that out. We broke down the rosters by each team. So we're not going to do that necessarily and rehash that as much here, except what we're going to do is we're going to address what's a question or what's something that you're looking forward to seeing from each team in this tournament. Let's start with the game that we're going to see here in less than an hour, Japan and Australia. What are you looking forward to seeing the most there, Victor, about that matchup?
Well, I think with Team Australia, you're dealing with two teams who are the most acclimated to the Olympic settings in Tokyo. Japan playing in their home country, and Australia, they've been in the area in Japan for nearly a month now. They did 2-week quarantine doing their training, and then they removed it to the Olympic Village late last week. So you're dealing with two teams that are already accustomed and acclimated themselves to the conditions. I feel there will be a lot of pressure on Japan early in this game, Eric. And I think Australia needs to take advantage of that because Japan, they're the ones that have all the pressure on their shoulders as the host country, as being one of the perennial favorites with USA to take home gold. And if you're Team Australia, if you can capitalize early, I feel Australia can pull off a huge upset and really shake up how things can end up with the top two teams in this round robin will play for the gold medal on Tuesday morning.
I'm interested to see it. I keep checking social media to see if we'll get lineups. Do we see Gabby playing start for Australia? I think that's the thing. Could we get a Gabby playing versus Yukiko Ueno matchup right off the bat? Now, what's so fascinating about these Olympics, you talked about get your coffee. This is a benefit. The start times here are pretty generous compared to what I thought it would be. Because usually in the World Championship, the games would be going on, a lot of them in the 3, 4 a.m. Eastern time, United States time zone. But, for example, this Japan game is going to start at 9 a.m. Japan time. And I think part of that is because there's no crowd. There will be no crowds at the Olympics. And I think they adjusted these schedules to make it more TV friendly, to be honest, globally. That's just my thought, without talking to people on that. More on that a little bit. But that's the thing I'm looking forward to seeing is, do we see Gabby against Yukiko Ueno right off the bat? And I think that's a fascinating matchup. That could be a tricky game deal. Rob is asking, where can I watch these games in Canada? I believe CBC will be your home for the Olympics there. Check your local listings, though. We will emphasize that because as smart as me and Vic are, we don't know.
We ain't that smart.
We can't tell you every continent. Glenn Warshaw chiming in. By the way, send your questions in, not just for tonight, but feel free to keep asking questions throughout the week. We'll be doing we'll answer them as best as we can as far as during the live shows. It could be Olympics, obviously, but we also will address from time to time some other softball news going on, like in the college game and things like that. But Glenn Warshaw asked, who is the third best Olympic softball team behind the U.S. and Japan? First of all, are we sure that U.S. and Japan are the two best teams? How confident are we on that? Because, Vic, and it's a good segue, we're going to see USA against Italy at 11 p.m. Eastern tonight. And the question that I have, and I think you have, and I think a lot of people have, people have been asking me this question, and I think people have been asking you this question. Does the U.S. have enough offense? People are skeptical about this U.S. offense. I don't think anybody's questioning the pitching. In fact, pardon the interruption, or good for which I think you would not have no problem in admitting this. You and I this show is in a lot of parts a tribute to Wilbon and Kornheiser. You're the smart one.
Yes,
You're Wilbon.
With obviously a lot more hair than Wilbon and Kornheiser. No offense.
I'm not in an attic, but I'm close to an attic, like Kornheiser currently
Crazy old man in his non-attic.
But Wilbon actually made a pick, Victor. He picked the U.S. to beat Italy because Monica Abbott and Kat Osterman are walking through that door. That was his quote there. That being said, so nobody's questioning the pitching. But people are questioning the offense. Is that the question that I think you have?
A lot of people, I kind of agree with them, Eric, in terms of the offense. However, I'm not as concerned about the offense as a lot of people on the message boards and out in social media are, because let's remember, Eric, Valerie Arioto nearly single-handedly helped give the USA the win in the then-known International Cup a few years ago. Let's remember Rachel Garcia, two-time National Player of the Year, had the key hit, had the game-winning hit to give the USA the World Championships in Japan, over Japan, a few years back as well. So I'm not concerned about the offensive team USA. I think the people are worried about the consistency of the offense. They're not concerned about the offense itself, because you look at the names that are going to have in the lineup with Arioto, with Garcia, with Aguilar, with Muli Polo, with Bubba Nichols. They're not concerned about the offense. They're concerned about how consistent it can be to pair with the pitching of a Kat, of a Monica, of Ali Carter. And you're on mute.
Everybody, first of many mutes.
By the way, we're going to keep a tally of how many times Eric talks and he has himself on mute throughout our live broadcast. So, folks at home, please count along. I currently have my number set for 7. So, Eric, you are at 1. We're going to track mutes like Paul Heyman counts suplexes for Brock Lesnar.
Very good. Could go right down to the wire. I think people are interested to see what the lineup will look like, who's playing where, right? They only have 15 active players roster-wise, and I think that's important to keep in mind because we're going to address one of the questions that has developed since we did the podcast came out Monday morning, which is about the alternates in that situation with Team USA. We'll address that in a few minutes, but I think people are curious about this lineup. I think when people have kind of nitpicked this roster, it seems to be pointed towards the offense, right? There's people that think Jessie Warren, for example, should be on this team at third base. She's not. Things like that. I keep reminding people there's only 15 players you could play. So you have to have a flexible lineup. I think they have to be sound defensively. And I think the counter is, look, at this level, especially when you get to the medal round, you're going to face the best pitchers.
Yes.
So the odds of you just blowing up for 8-10 runs are not there, in my opinion. I think this is going to be up. We'll see how the park plays once we watch it. It's a baseball stadium. We'll get into that as well. That's been a bit of a hot topic on social media. So I'm curious to see how the park plays. Does the ball fly? They're playing early in the day, except for the gold medal game is going to be at night, which is kind of interesting. But that's going to be the big question, I think, for the U.S. offense. How does the lineup play out? I would expect Arioto. I think she's the key. I think she's the key to that offense because I'll be curious to see if teams pitch to Arioto or do they pitch around her because they've done that too in the past. And if so, who's hitting behind Valerie Arioto? I'm going to keep an eye on that. But I think
I think more importantly, Eric, who hits in front of Arioto as well.
Right.
That's going to be something else that not a lot of people are going to mention. They want to talk about, okay, who's hitting behind somebody, but it's always who's hitting in front of them as well. Who's going to be the beneficiary of getting those pitches that Valerie would usually see? They do pitch around her.
Obviously, Kat Osterman, Monica Abbott are the most well-known players on this team. Michael Wilbon's mentioned him. They both were on MSNBC, I think, recently to promote the Olympics. They're the two faces. I think we all can agree on that.
Yes.
One of the other things I'm intrigued to see, Victor, and I want to see if you have a pick. Other than Cat and Mon, I'm curious, who comes out of this a bigger name? In other words, all of the players that are playing in the Olympics, as softball-wise, are big names to us. We cover this on a daily basis. Our audience knows them. I'm talking about the generic fan that maybe doesn't tap into softball on a daily basis, but maybe every once in a while.
Okay.
You do a local sports show. I'm sure softball doesn't come up, but if it were, maybe this name. It's going to be Monica and Kat. Like if the show you do, probably Kat and Monica will be the first names that get brought up. Who's a player that could rise to that level where people is be a household name at the end of this Olympics? Kind of like, and I'll make the comparison, like 04. When you think back to the 04 team that won the gold, and I've called it the dream team, everybody going in knew about Jenny Finch. I think that's when you first heard about a young Kat Osterman. Jessica Mendoza became a big name after that. Stacy Newman, other, et cetera, et cetera. What do you think about this year's team? Because we're not going to have a softball in the Olympics again until 28, and some of these players will be that are not Monica and Kat are likely going to be on that 28 team and be the faces of that team.
Are we talking Team USA? Or are we talking
Team USA? I want to start Team. Yeah.
Well, the easy answer is Rachel Garcia. Obviously, but you can make an argument she's already a big name with what she's done with UCLA, winning the national championship, 2-time player of the year. I'll give you a name that not many people are thinking about. Deja Mulipola, catcher. I can see if she has a great Olympics and wins a gold medal, I can see her kind of carrying that mantle with Garcia into 2028 as far as those who will presumably be returning for Team USA in the 2028 Olympics. So that's a possibility there.
I'm very intrigued by that. Rachel's a good name. I'm curious to see how she fares in this Olympics. Does she make a memorable? Remember, she had a memorable walk-off hit in the World Championships against Japan to get to that gold medal game back in 18. Mm-hmm. Does she have a moment
which eventually helped them qualify for the Olympics?
Right. So those are the moments that I'm thinking about. Could we have here in these Olympics that could make you a household name 8 years from now, 7 years from now? And quite frankly, bring that excitement and that momentum for softball into 28 as well. So I think that's going to be very interesting. Pitching-wise, this will be fascinating. Your opinion, and see if you disagree or agree. I think Kat will get the ball tonight against Italy. I think Monica gets saved for Canada on Wednesday night. I do think you could see Garcia or Carta tonight as well. Would not surprise me with Ken Erickson go by committee too. In other words, not necessarily have a pitcher go the distance. Obviously, how the game plays out will play a big role in that. Do you agree with that? Or do you have a different direction on that?
I wouldn't be surprised. Anything that Ken Erickson does that wouldn't surprise me, Eric, because that's how versatile and dynamic he is with his pitching staff. He's someone who can go by committee. Then, well, let's also remember he also had Georgina Corrick, who he literally threw every single game for USF during the 2021 college season. So it's really going to depend on, again, what you said about how the game is flowing, and two, what the matchup is going to be. And I highlighted this on an episode on Monday. Coach Erickson is always going to play the matchups and try and leverage those matchups to what is going to optimize his team's chances of winning. So he's not going to be afraid if he sees something happening to make a change, either defensively, go with a pinch hitter, or go to the bullpen. That's what Coach Ken Erickson has done. And if you look at what USA softball has done in the last 3-4 years leading up to the Olympics, the record speaks for itself.
All right. So with that in mind, who do you think he puts in the circle to start?
I think he starts Kat tonight.
Okay. And remember, her and Monica were part of the 08 team. I got to think you want to have somebody that's actually had the experience of playing in an Olympics. I think that's a good way to start. Keep in mind, they play Italy tonight, then they play Canada tomorrow night, then they have an off day. So in my opinion, to me, Ideally, you have a great start from Cat. You can maybe bring in Carta and / or Garcia in relief to close it out if you have to. Maybe you keep Cat in, whatever. And you save Monica for the big game against Canada, which I'm now going to get to Glenn's answer, is I think the third best softball team going in and could be a threat to win the gold medal. I think Team Canada and Mexico, Victor. I know that's the game you're looking forward to. You're not happy because you're not going to be able to watch it live because you'll be rung 3, 4. Exactly. I will because I'm a nut. 2 a.m. for this game, right? Is that right? 2 a.m. But it's a big game. Dallas Escobedo has been quoted saying this is the game that'll set the tone. It's a huge game. And, if you're Canada, for example, it's a big game because if you lose to Mexico, now you got to play Team USA, and you're in danger of dropping your first 2. I think that's a fantastic matchup. I think Canada and Mexico are fighting for the third best country. I think both those teams are medal contenders. Both teams, in my opinion, are definitely gold medal contenders. Both of them have beaten Team USA in the past. I think it's a fascinating matchup. Both have quality arms, a lot of depth in the arms, and have some good bats. I think that's a fascinating matchup. I think it's a toss-up.
And really, Eric, it's going to come down to idea for me. That's going to set the tempo of which of those two teams has the best chance to make it to the gold medal game. Because you got for Canada, you got Mexico and USA off the bat. If you go 0-2, you're looking at best case scenario, go playing for bronze. As opposed to Mexico, you win, you get a day off, you get prepared for Team USA. So you want to have that momentum on your side going into that matchup versus USA.
Same for
whoever
Canada.
Wins that game. Yeah, same for Canada as well.
Because Canada plays U.S. tomorrow night, 8 o'clock Eastern. We'll have a pregame and a postgame show for that U.S.-Canada game. It's a marquee game. Both of them have strong depth arms-wise. Mexico, do they go Danielle O'Toole, who was part of Team USA, then transferred over to Team Mexico. Dallas Escobedo is an option there. For Canada, you've seen both of these teams up close. Sarah Gronewogen is an option for them. Yep. You believe Lori is going to be more of a closer? You don't believe she starts during these Olympics, or is that?
I wouldn't be surprised. Let me put it this way. I would not be surprised if Danielle Lori starts versus Team USA tomorrow night.
Whoa!
That would not surprise me at all. I think Gronewogen gets the ball for Team Canada. And think about this, Eric. We highlighted this a little bit when we had her on the show a couple of years ago. The serious health scare that Gronewogen had, and for her to play for her home country with the chance, we don't know. Again, we won't know who's going to get the ball. Who will get that first pitch for Team Canada? It could be Gronewogen, could be Lori, it could be Lauren Regula. We don't know, but I think Gronewogen, my personal opinion, I think she gets the ball. In Canada, from what I've seen with them, they could go from it back for committee as well, like Team USA.
Oh, I definitely think you could see a lot of arms. You've seen both teams in person. Give me your thoughts on that matchup. What are the things that you're intrigued to see those two? Now that you're going to play each other, what are some of the things you're intrigued to see how that plays out in that matchup?
How does the Canada pitching staff handle Mexico's offense? Because if you compare offenses for Canada, USA, Mexico, Italy, all the teams in the Olympics, you can convince me, or I can convince the fan, that Mexico has one of the deeper lineups in the Olympics. You look at Tabby Forbes, who had a tremendous career at NC State, Nicole Mendez and Sydney Romero, national champions multiple times at Oklahoma. Tori Vidal is rock solid first baseman. They have the offense that can go along with the pitching of an Escobedo and a Danielle O'Toole. So if Mexico's bats start to get hot to go with that pitching, you're correct. Mexico is a serious threat to not only be on the podium, but to win gold.
Yeah, I agree. They beat Canada to qualify for the Olympics in Canada during the qualifying round a couple years back, and they did it with pitching, and I think that's going to be interesting. No Sierra Romero. They have Sydney Romero on this team. Mexico was kind of interesting there on some of their selections there. But nonetheless, that's going to be a fascinating matchup, one that I'll have a lot of caffeine under me to watch there. But I think I think personally, with respect to Australia and Italy, I think there's 4 teams out of the 6 that can win gold. I think Australia can medal. Italy, I have serious questions whether they can medal. It would be a heck of a run. Not to say they can't knock teams off, but to me, there's 5 teams that can medal, 4 teams that are legit threat for the gold. Agree, disagree?
I agree. But look, Team Italy, they have offense. Erica, and then Justin McLeod mentioned on Justin's World in an article he posted earlier in the week that Erica Pianscatelli can make a strong case for being the best hitter in the world. You look at what she did with Athletes Unlimited. We know what she did with her collegiate career with playing for James Landreneau and McNeese State, the power numbers that she put up there. And if she can help lead Team Italy, if she gets on playing for a medal, that is and let's remember, Team Italy's head coach suddenly passed away last year.
Sure.
So if Italy can get to a medal position with that is a huge win, not just for Italy, but it's a huge victory for the European Softball Federation, because it gives them a belief that, hey, we can be out here, we can get the resources, and we can compete with the best in the world.
You're right, and they're a team that can beat you in a moment's notice. It's a tricky game to open with, you know what I mean? Like some nerves. I wonder, with no crowd, I think it hurts Japan, obviously, right? Because they would have had a huge crowd advantage, 15,000, 20,000. Remember, we've had Monica Abbott on this show. She's played there professionally, talked about 15, 20,000. With no fans, do you think anybody benefits, any team particular benefits from a no crowd? I think or is it one of those that just hurts Japan because they're not going to have the fans in front of it? Could this, which has kind of made me think a little bit. Like I was prepared, to have Japan as the favorite or pick Japan to win the gold, but that was under the assumption there'd be a crowd. Now there's no crowd. It's got me to pause a little bit. Big deal, no deal.
I would say medium deal.
Look at you, Wilbon. This is why he's Wilbon, guys. He just goes, doesn't address the question, just goes push.
Okay, you know what? Okay, to answer your question, okay, I will say medium deal.
Go ahead.
But simply because you felt that you were ready to play in front of fans, but also let's remember they were playing some of their games in front of limited or no fans anyway. So they already knew what it was like to play with limited or no attendance in the stands. So we have to keep that in perspective as well. I think it's a big deal for Japan, no question. But for the rest of but as far as the rest of the teams as a whole, I think it's a medium deal.
It's a bummer because I think the atmosphere would have been incredible for softball.
Oh, yeah.
And I think it would have been the talk. Yes. I think it would have been the talk of the Olympics, of the environment. Unfortunately, it's not, but that's, at least they're playing. So I think that's a cool thing. Let's address a couple topics that have come up. And one of them has been asked, there's questions. MIW. Can you comment on the USA 3 alternates? I think they were sent home. Seems like in COVID times you might need them. All right, let me clarify a couple things by rule, because I've actually double-checked some of this stuff, talked to people about this. Once the Olympics begin, in fact, in other words, prior to your first game, your 15 players are locked in. In other words, that's it. You cannot make switches. So an alternate cannot play, is not eligible once the Olympics start. And that's something, I'll be honest, I had needed people to clarify for me on that. I didn't know that either. So I think there's a lot of people, Victor, rightfully so, assuming that an alternate was a player that could be available at a moment's notice during the Olympics if there was an injury. But that is not the case.
No.
Once the final rosters
Once the final roster
set the day
of
the first game. So that's it. And I think that's why people that are referring to, obviously, Kalani Ricketts, Hannah Flippin and Taylor
Edwards
all left. And Kalani had a lengthy post about it. So did Hannah Flippin about it on social media, which created some talk. I think it caught people off guard. But I think the first thing we need to do before we address that as a whole, the alternates would not have been eligible to play for the Olympics. The only reason they were there is if somebody got hurt prior to the Olympics or something happened prior to the Olympics and a switch on the roster. But now that the Olympics are starting in 30 minutes, the rosters for everybody is locked out. All right? So does everybody understand that? All right.
Yes, so there'll be a pop quiz later. There'll be a pop quiz tomorrow night.
So now in a normal year, the alternates would be at the stadium as a fan supporting their team.
Yes.
Except, as Vic's camera just fell, except because of the protocols over there, there are no fans allowed in the stadium. And that includes the alternates. The alternates are not allowed to be in the stadium. We'll see what kind of view we have when the telecast begins at the top of the hour. So they would not been allowed to be in the stadium. They would have had to been in a hotel. It's separated from the team, by the way, because of the protocols. You're not going to have them all bunched in together. So they would have actually been in a separate hotel, from what I understand, to what the Olympic team would have been, because all the Olympic teams are now in the same hotel. There's obviously rules where they're going to have to stay there. It's probably very basic. That I'm paraphrasing here. Basically, hotel, stadium, hotel. Basically, it's my guess. You're not going out, hanging out, all right?
No, you're not enjoying the scenery.
And I don't think the alternates would have been allowed to hang out with them because they're not a part of it because of the rules. So I think the alternates options were, or you're going to stick around in a hotel for the next week watching softball, or do you want to go home and watch softball? And I think that's kind of what happened.
Yeah. And this is always the difficult part of being an alternate, because you're a part of the team, but you're not really a part of the team, and then you're not allowed to watch your teammates play, and that's probably knowing those three, the competitors that they are. It's the not being able to watch it with your teammates. That was probably, outside of playing, was probably the most difficult part of this entire process.
Right. And this is where I hope this changes for the next Olympics, 28. I think they need to expand the roster now. And this is where I will bash the softball committee, the Olympic softball committee on this, because soccer also has alternates. They waived that off for this Olympics. I know this because I cover this for my other line of work, many works that I have.
Yeah, many lines of work, sir.
Aline Reyes, who you know, is a goalkeeper for Team Brazil. She played at UCF, is with Team Brazil. She was an alternate, but now she's going to be part of the active roster because they've kind of waived the alternate because they want more depth, because they're concerned, well, what if somebody catches COVID? What if, just for that reason, what if somebody gets hurt? Things like that. So they've kind of, to allow the alternates to be in the mix and not make them disappear, they've expanded the roster in soccer. They should do the same for softball. That's what I would have done for these Olympics, first of all. I would have expanded the roster. I don't know if that was even an option, if that was even discussed, if that was even brought up. Let's be real. We all have covered softball for many years. I think we know the answer is probably no. Because that because forward thinking softball.
That requires common sense, and we all know common sense is not common in the sport.
But regardless, how you feel about that, it's ridiculous that they're limited to 15 on a roster. It's absurd. Like, who carries 15 players on a roster these days in softball? You covered Division II. How many doesn't Division II even carry more now than 15?
Some rosters carry 16, 17 players on a roster. That's bare minimum.
Right, bare minimum. Most major programs in Division I carry 20 active, 18 to 20. Now you could go as many low as you want. 15 is fine. My point is, I think for the next Olympics, the roster should go up to 18.
Yes.
I think for everybody. Now, I could see a scenario. I guess the counter there would be, I think the rest of the world may have an issue with that, because that would favor Team USA more. right? Because Team USA has more to pick from.
They have a deeper pool to
pick from
deeper
than
pool
say
available to them.
Correct, than say a Mexico or Italy, etc. So maybe that's why that won't happen. I have a feeling there's some. I think that's part of it, but I think it should be 18. I think 18 is a reasonable number. The game has grown, and I think it's one of those things where I think 18 makes sense from a depth standpoint, from a health standpoint, and would avoid this situation that I am concerned about. What happens if a team gets an injury or two here in the next week? What happens if somebody gets COVID?
Or someone gets COVID? And here's the other thing, Eric, that we haven't even we're 30 over 35 minutes into the show, and we haven't addressed the elephant in the room. COVID cases are increasing. 71. There have been 71 confirmed cases of COVID within the Olympics, up between athletes and staff. That's before the first pitch takes place in 24 minutes.
And they had a press conference, and they said that they have not ruled out a last minute cancellation.
Yes, that's the sort of Damocles, if you want to Google that, ladies and gentlemen.
I agree, and look, I don't think there's. I don't know. I'm not sure that if the Olympics will make it through the 2 weeks, and I'm not sure every sport's going to make it through 2 weeks. It would not surprise me if some sports get canceled.
You know what? And as much as we were all getting mad about softball starting prior to the opening ceremonies, this may end up being a blessing in disguise for the sport. Yes. Simply because if you can make it, if we're talking at this time next week with a gold medal, a silver medalist, a bronze medalist, all the games played, and now one COVID case, and we're hearing about other sports having to be postponed and or canceled due to COVID, that is a victory for the sport of softball, for the sport of baseball. If that happens, and you're hearing about other sports having to get the axe because of COVID concerns,
right?
The early start could be the best thing that ever happens to the sport of softball in the Olympics.
And it's an outdoor sport, helps as well. Yes. Get all that. You're right. Get a head start. Baseball could be left out. If they decide to shut things down in a week, who knows? Hopefully not. Hopefully not.
Yep.
But you're right. But I do agree with you. Because some people are complaining that I know it's a shock to you. They're complaining on social media.
Shocking. I know.
They're complaining. Why isn't these games on the linear networks? Why are they starting before these ceremonies? And I think I don't care about all that. Like, this is actually good.
Look, we have waited 13 years to get this sport back in the Olympics. You think I'm gonna be crying and moaning about a start time and being played in a baseball stadium? Speaking of a segue, Mr. Lopez.
Segue. Good segue, sir. So that's been the other hot topic. These games are going to be played at a baseball stadium, which has got some people upset. Danielle, too, has been defending the Olympics, rightfully so. I understand the complaints. I'll be honest, at first I was thrown off because Japan has a lot of softball stadiums. They play a professional league there. They could have played it there. But as I was told, keep in mind, softball is a joint thing with baseball. It's a joint event effort. So in other words, you're sharing it with baseball. So of course they're going to share the stadium. It makes sense. And we'll see how it looks. We'll see how it plays. A lot of these players have played in baseball stadiums similar. Obviously, if most of them who played in the NPF or even wherever, they have played in a baseball stadium because the majority of played countries, let's be real, are going to build a softball stadium only.
No.
So Japan, I don't know. And again, I don't know all the ins and outs on all that stuff. I think clearly this just made the most sense, I'm guessing. I'm not as bothered by it because I understand the rules on it. I am curious, though, Victor, if softball and baseball are in the Olympics in 2028, which is scheduled to be Los Angeles, I'm very fascinated to see what happens then because I would bet that baseball will be at Dodger Stadium. Maybe Anaheim. I'll give Anaheim a slight chance. But I got to think, the Olympics in 84 was in Dodger Stadium. Dodger Stadium is one of the most famous stadiums out there. Why would you not put it in Dodger Stadium, right? I don't think they will put softball at a Dodger Stadium, quote unquote. I feel it would be
UCLA. You have 9 years to upgrade Easton Stadium to an Olympic softball quality facility. Hello.
7 years.
7 years. Excuse me.
Yeah, 9. It was like what? 2030. So yeah, no, I think that's the point to make. To me, that will be an interesting topic. Now, obviously, I think UCLA's counter to, well, let's make sure softball's in first, right? And I don't know the answer of when they vote on that.
Y'all should be getting a new stadium for softball anyway. That's a whole nother topic for another day.
Touche. That's a good point. So you might as well just do it. But I am interested to see how that's handled. You're right. I think UCLA would be a candidate. I would throw in Palm Springs possibly, which hosts Mary Nutter. I would think would be the other one.
Because they do have they have multiple areas that they can play.
I'm going to have to reach out. Cal is going to have a new stadium up. I got to get an update on how that's going to look. Could that be an option in Berkeley? I don't know. That's something I'll reach out in future. We have time. But that is something to keep in mind, is because I don't think in the States that's going to fly. I think they would receive a ton of, you think this was negative feedback now. I think it would be 10 times worse if it was done in the States, because it's all in real time. So I think there will be pressure in 28 to make sure softball's played in a softball stadium and not played at Dodger Stadium or, Anaheim or wherever. So I think 28 you'll see a softball. I would be surprised if softball is not played in a softball stadium for the Olympics in Los Angeles. And I think the U.S., the bragging rights there is that, hey, we'll be the first to do that in theory. Yeah. Right. So exactly. That could be something to monitor. But I'm not as bothered about it for this year for the reasons, like I said, this is shared with baseball. Plus, I think Daniel too made some good points. I think let's just be glad they're playing, because honestly, this thing was kind of wavering, right?
It was iffy.
And there are people out there that don't believe these Olympics should be played. Toyota up in Japan has actually decided to boycott the Olympics. They will not sponsor in Japan the Olympics. They will sponsor like the United States broadcast and things like that. But
the local broadcasts in Japan, they're not going to sponsor.
There's a very divided situation in Japan why if these Olympics should be going on or not. And it is what it is. So to me, play it. I don't think and I personally don't think the players care where these games are being played. They just want to play. Right? They just want to play. Yeah. And we'll see how the stadium looks. If we see something weird, quunky, we'll address it. Hopefully not. But I think the players, I'm sure they've practiced and all that. I think they just want to play. I think that's at the end of the day, it's not the end of the world.
No. I think life will move on. And I think the fact that we're just talking about having softball back in the Olympics, we're going to have a actual softball game take place in the Olympics within the next 20 minutes. That is the biggest thing that we have to be talking about.
Agreed on that. The coverage, I mentioned it'll be NBC Sports Network will carry the majority of these games. Some will be on USA Network. CNBC, I think I saw, was going to have one of the games. A lot of these will be streamed online. Do you have an issue with the fact where's the gold medal game scheduled to air? The gold medal game is scheduled to air on NBC Sports Network live. Are you bothered by the fact that it won't be on NBC? I'm not, because I'll go first on that. I think the NBC thing is overrated when it comes to the Olympics, because if you follow the Olympics, the NBC doesn't show real sports. No fun, no pun. No, with all due respect to gymnastics and swimming, I don't care. So they're going to air that whether it's live or tape. That's their bread and butter. And look,
that's the money. That's the cash cow.
Their target audience and their track and field, and their target audience is not the sports fan, and it hasn't been for a while. It's the general fan. Yeah. I would rather be on an NBC Sports Network, etc., live than worrying about being on stream or being on tape delay.
Yeah.
So I'm okay with the channel assignments. I think softball fans are accustomed to it. We know how to find games online. We know how to find games on channels. I think that's been proven in the college game, and I expect that to be the case in this particular aspect of it. I am intrigued to see what TV numbers they get. I'll be honest with you, Victor, and I was talking to Justin about this because I plan on covering the TV rating side of this. But what's unique about this, I don't really have anything to compare it to because the last Olympics that softball was in was in '08. We don't have numbers for that. So television has changed, quite frankly, since then. There wasn't many softball. Even back then, there wasn't a lot of softball games televised. Now, the gold medal game, I believe, was carried on NBC, but that was on like a 4 a.m. deal, which, you're not going to get a big number.
No.
So I'm very curious. One of the things I'll do is I'll compare how softball does, hopefully, if I have access to it, compare how softball does versus other sports in the Olympics, specifically a baseball, a basketball, etc. Do you think people will tune in?
Yes, people are going to tune in. And I feel the early start times, those morning games, Eric, those are going to give higher numbers than a lot of people expect. Because let's remember, for a lot of students, a lot of players, they're in the summer. They don't have school. They may not have practice until 9, 10 o'clock in the morning. May not have games until 9, 10 o'clock in the morning. So if they can catch one of their favorite players early in the morning before they get where they're going, then that's a benefit. That's a plus. Also, when you look at the schedule, take out the 12 a.m. 1:30 games notwithstanding, it's a favorable time, not just for those in the East Coast, but if you're a softball fan in the Pacific time zone, this is a great schedule for you. Because think about this. You got Australia and Japan getting ready to start at 5 p.m. Pacific time. And then you get to eat your dinner. And then you have Italy versus the United States at 8 p.m. Pacific time. And you get Mexico and Canada at 11 p.m. So if you're a night owl, you can get a triple header of softball and still have time to get some quality sleep.
Yeah, I'm going to be curious what kind of numbers draw. I think USA-Canada Wednesday night could be a big draw.
That could be a big number.
Right? Think about this. 8 p.m. Eastern, Wednesday night, no NBA, right? I mean, the finals are going on. Like, I think tonight's games will get hurt a little bit because the finals, game 6 of Milwaukee and Phoenix, will start at 9 on ABC, which is, by the way, the other reason why you wouldn't put softball on NBC tonight, because they would probably get beaten, quite frankly.
Destroyed.
So I just wish people would, research this stuff.
Common sense is, Eric.
Or just acknowledge me. Just acknowledge me as the TV guy, right?
The TV head of the table.
Thank you. Very much. Very good. But I am curious about the USA-Canada game. I don't believe it would do World Series numbers, right? Like, do you think there's a chance that any of these games draw bigger than, say, Oklahoma, Florida State, which did over 2 million in game 2? Do you think it has a chance? I'm curious. I don't know. I'll be honest. I don't know because we don't have anything to compare it to in the past.
That's the thing. It's such a.
Plus, it's not on ESPN. It's NBC Sports Network. Will people be able to find that channel?
That's
how many? And the other thing is how many people?
Have it?
How many people are just going to watch it on the computer?
Yeah, I think the streaming numbers are going to be high.
Yes, for this Olympics in general, yeah, I think that's where you're going to get hardcore because that's what you don't want to. I think the days of tape delay and not hiding from, hey, I don't want to know the result are over.
You can't because you got social media, you got everything available to you on your phone.
Yeah,
so the streaming numbers are going to be up.
I do think the 2 games. I'll say this, not counting. I'm not going to count the medal round.
Okay.
I think the 2 most watched Olympic softball games this week probably will be USA-Canada Wednesday night, 8 p.m. You got star power both sides, familiar faces, great slot. As I mentioned, there's no NBA, there's no real sporting event up against it. I mean, you got regular Major League Baseball, but I think that's a marquee game. The other one that it could be, and it depends on how both teams are doing, is USA-Japan Sunday night at 9 Eastern. That I think could draw big.
Right.
That's on USA Network, which has more homes than NBC Sports Network. So with a 9 p.m. Eastern, I think that could be your 2 most watched games. I think like, for example, USA Australia is scheduled for 9 Eastern on Saturday night, but that's going to be on CNBC. That's kind of confusing. It's kind of like nobody's thinking CNBC when you're thinking sports. So
No.
I don't see that drawing as big, but I think USA Canada could be the most watched game on NBC Sports Network as far as the non-medal round, and I think USA Japan because it's on USA Network, which has more homes at home. I'm not going to comment on the gold medal game because I got to see who the opponents are, right? Let's be real. If USA's in it, more eyeballs. If they're not, less eyeballs.
Less eyeballs.
At least here in the States.
Yep.
I'm not commenting for the rest of the world. So we'll see how that goes. And I think I think that pretty much nuts it. I think $1 million. I will put the over. I think those two games I mentioned hopefully can get over $1 million. Now, the challenge that the Japan game is going to have is there's going to be NBC primetime Olympic coverage that night. So, I don't know what NBC is going to have on. It's going to be Mike Tirico. I don't know if it's live. My guess is it's swimming, right? It's opening weekend usually means swimming. People like to tune into swimming. So that's going to hurt the Japan game. So I'm going to stick to, I think USA Canada could be the most watched softball game. And it would not surprise me if it goes over $1 million. Maybe that's my over-under is $1 million.
Yeah, it's definitely a possibility. What I would be fascinated to see, and I know first pitch is coming up in less than 10 minutes, and we still got to make our picks. What happened? How will be the streaming numbers will be? And I know we won't get those numbers because Canada's going to get big numbers when their coverage, whenever they're playing. Japan's numbers are going to be humongous.
Right. I want to paraphrase. I'm just talking U.S. TV numbers. I'm not including globally because you're right. That's a great point you make. I'm not including Canada which is going to draw. Japan's going to draw. Globally, this will be watched a lot. But I don't think we'll get those numbers necessarily. Maybe we'll get them country by country. But I'm just focused more on the U.S. side.
Yep. Well, Eric, we're less than 10 minutes out from first pitch. We've delayed it long enough. It's that time, sir.
So before we do that, the other thing I want to change for the Olympics, I think the gold medal game. First of all, you broke this down. Explain because I do like the fact you're going to have 1 versus 2 in the gold medal game, 3 versus 4 in the bronze. Correct? It's not like we've seen in the juniors where you have to. If you win the bronze medal game, you technically play for the gold and all that. I don't like that. But the other thing I would say. I think the gold medal game should be a best of 3.
Best of 3 series.
Yeah, and I'll tell you why. I think the 08 U.S. team got kind of screwed. Remember, they went undefeated during the 08 Olympics. They beat Japan to get to the gold medal game. So what happens? They get to face their reward was facing Yukiko Bueno and Japan, and they lost. So they went undefeated for what? They lost to a team that already lost the game. I feel cheated in that regard. I think a best of 3. Think about it. Softball is made out of double elimination. And if you want to include the bronze as double elimination, if you want to do like the top 4 teams advance to a double elimination format, I know you're a big fan of double elimination formats. You've been calling for this in Division II for a long time in college. To me, I would go double elimination. Your thoughts?
It's an old other topic because you have to figure out how much time you're going to have, when you're going to fit in the games and all that good stuff. But that's something that we're going to definitely talk about once the Olympics end. What's next for the sport? Because that's going to be the number one question.
I will say, in fairness, U.S. has benefited from the same thing many years ago. I think in 96 or 2000, they had a loss and came back and won the gold. So it's not. It works both ways. I get that. I think 2 out of 3 – for the gold, the 2 teams battle it out, 2 out of 3. Who's against more softball? But I understand the counter to that, and maybe we'll see that in LA in 28 when they're in different stadiums and not have to depend on, hey, we got to finish this by this day because baseball's supposed to start.
Exactly.
Right, I've stalled enough. Give me your picks.
Okay, so I have USA taking on Japan. Shocking. In the gold medal game, I have Mexico versus Australia in the bronze.
Wow! So no Canada, no Canada.
Here's the thing, Eric. You have to respect the fact that Australia has medaled in every Olympics, and until K Parnaby and company are ready to end that streak. And by the way, they got Gabby playing. I don't see that ending anytime soon. I have USA playing Japan. I got USA winning the gold, Japan with the silver. Mexico takes home the bronze.
So you got wait. So you have Mexico, not Australia. You have Mexico with the bronze, Australia fourth.
Yes.
Okay. I have USA, Japan, but I'm going with Japan.
Oh.
I'm going with Japan for a couple of reasons. I do think they're at home. They have been the team that hasn't had to travel. They haven't had too much adjustment there. Number two is I don't want to agree with Victor at all, because if we agree with Victor, then USA's doomed. So I'm not going to agree. So I'll take the hit. Hopefully I'm wrong. Although nothing against Japan. But now I don't, I'm begging on Yukiko Ueno still being on top of her game. She's, third one. I have Canada winning the bronze. Danielle Laurie. I can't imagine that group not medaling. They have come all the way. Her, Jen Sally, part of the 08. They've never medaled in the Olympics. That sport has grown in that country from a talent standpoint. I think they medal. I do think I like your Australia pick. Gabby Plain. It sounds like you and I kind of are on the same page that we think Gabby Plain could be one of the stars of the Olympics, non-American here, right?
Yes.
Give me a couple other names, non-Americans you can think will break out that people will get to know in this wheel. Obviously, people are going to get to know Yukiko Ueno, among others on the Japan team. I think Canada. I'm very curious about Canada. Who steps into that high level there, and can they score enough runs? From their standpoint. A Victoria Haywood, does she kind of get to the limelight? Is it a Jen Sally, who you said she's playing more first? Is it a Joey Lai? Is it Lori? What kind of impact does Lori have? Mexico, obviously with Vidalis and Romero, those are contenders and to be big names along with Mendez, right?
Yep. Oh, absolutely, Eric. And also Erica Piancastelli from Team Italy as well. You can't forget about her.
I believe, I don't know if you have Justin's article in front of you. I think he had Mexico winning the silver. So you and him are on the Mexico bandwagon, I believe.
Yeah, he has Japan winning the gold, and I believe he feels... He has
Mexico the silver.
Yep, I believe that is the case, yes.
Does he have a bronze medalist?
I don't see a bronze medalist. He has Japan winning the gold, though.
He has Japan over Mexico. So that probably means he has either U.S. or Canada or Australia. One of them will be the bronze. That's bold. I'll go Japan, USA, Canada as my 3 medal teams. It's chalky, a little chalky, some would argue. Although the Mexico-Canada game is huge. Huge game. I mean, especially if you're Canada, because then you're 0-1, potentially facing a Monica Abbott or Kat Osterman or both on a Wednesday night. Try to avoid going 0-2 start. So
yeah,
same with Mexico.
The loser of Mexico-Canada, if they go 0-2, their chances of medaling drop significantly.
Yes. By the way, Justin just texted me. He has U.S. as his bronze medalist.
What? Whoa!
He has the U.S. as a bronze, yeah.
Wow. He has to have as a bronze medalist?
Yeah, I told you. He's got Japan and Mexico is just in the gold medal game.
Whoa.
But look, is it that crazy, though? Is it that crazy? Like this year, I think there's the competition is close.
I think
it's not crazy.
It's not out of the realm of possibilities. It is not. It really isn't. It's not out of the realm of possibilities. It's not.
All right, as Vic goes into the darkness
and into the light.
Into the light. So we'll see. I'm going to go with the home team over U.S., but I think that'll be your gold medal game. We'll see. But I think this is the most wide open softball Olympics by far. I think a number of combinations would definitely not surprise me one bit. So, all right, we're going to call it. We're going to get you set now. Go watch Japan, Australia. It's going to be on NBC Sports Network right now. Beth Mallins, Michelle Smith will be on the call. We will be back on live tomorrow night on the same channel, 7 o'clock Eastern. I will be on. Hope to be scheduled to be joined by Jen Becerra, who will break down what happened tonight in the 3 games and look ahead to that monster USA-Canada game. 8 o'clock Wednesday night. We'll be on at the pregame at 7. And then Victor and I will be back for the postgame, a special edition postgame show following USA-Canada on Wednesday night after the US-Canada game concludes. Make sure you follow us at In the Circle SB on Twitter and on Facebook, and subscribe on our YouTube page for content like this. We have live content coming up as well. We'll break that down more tomorrow's show. So, Victor, let's enjoy the games. The games are here.
Yes, sir.
For Victor Anderson, I'm Eric Lopez saying so long. We'll talk to you tomorrow night. This has been another edition of In the Circle Live, Olympic Softball.